Hi, this is No Ordinary Voice of Spiritual Ventriloquism. You are listening to him himself. Yom Torah. Isn't that amazing? And it's an annunciation by the blowing of the trumpets of war, usually the silver trumpets, or even the Yobel on Yom HaKippurim to enunciate the year of release. Very significant. Looking toward people being released back to their homes, released from their servitude, tribal allotments being restored, at least by the following spring. And that's especially at the year of release. Yom HaKippurim was to announce the upcoming release of servants and things like that. But a lot of these things have to do with homes and houses, annunciations of marriages, weddings, usually that were performed generally around the time of Shebet, Pentecost, which would announce then, then the bridegroom, that contract would be final, and then obviously would play into the fall feast where, the bride was being brought home, and there would be the celebration and stuff like that as well there. Anyway, touching on again this subject of ancient Israelite culture, Canaanite culture, the convergences between the two, the precursors to the Hebrew culture being Canaanite, not that the Hebrews were Canaanite, was one of the things that was very common in those days was how was an Israelite tribal village set up. An Israel tribal village was set up where a man would then, cleave to a wife, a patriarch, a paterfamilias, the leader of the family or a clan. He would build a house, and that house typically would have sleeping in the upper floor, places on the roof to dry goods like vegetables and things like that for storage. Right there in the house would be kind of like in the house. On the lower level would be where the animals would then, be penned up and things like that. And it seems kind of ancient and archaic. And though the sleeping quarters, the living quarters, the cooking quarters were separate, usually out in a courtyard or something like that. That these animals would be in there, and the significant thing is that the manure and the compost from the animals would be, you could use that for cooking. Okay, it was a good source of fuel, being that wood was probably something that had to go out and get gathered, and so that primarily that a lot of the fuel that was used for cooking was dried animal manure. And So anyway, that would also serve to the heat from the composting process would then rise up and would help kind of warm the house a little bit as well. It's an interesting design. You can see these in some of the different archaeological supplement books where they've done excavations and have actually excavated these houses, and that's the way they were. One of the things I wanted to touch on, in relationship to marriage and a home in ancient Israel, is that the book, in the book of John 14, it says, Jesus makes this statement, and unless you know what consists of an Israelite house or village, you might not fully understand this concept, because our mind kind of projects into the we say the afterworld or the heavenly realm, Shemayim, and we base our ideas on, what can come into our imagination more than what actually was. But Jesus was made this statement. He said, "In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you, and I go to prepare a place for you." This is Jesus speaking to his collective bride, his, what do you say, polygynous bride, or at least he's polygynous. The brides are always monogamous, but anyway, he said, "If I were not so, I told you, and if I go to prepare a place for you, I will come back and receive you to myself." Now, knowing what a typical Israelite village consisted of, or family, you would have Shebet Bet Av, in my Father's house. That means house of the Father. The Hebrew word Shebet Bet Av, in my Father's house. Are many mansions, places. And what a Hebrew family would do in ancient Israel is they would just build on to that house or that dwelling, and they would prepare a place there. Now, occasionally the village might grow large enough with servants and multiple sons who are bringing their wife or wives back home to their village, that they would build other home structures and stuff like that. But everything cycled around, and the focal point was always on the house of the Father. And he says, "I'm going to go and prepare a place for you." In other words, if there's going to be room for additional wives, families, and increase of economy and government, which the Bible also talks about that, the increase of his government and of his dominion, there shall be no end. That's the same village tribal expansion principle that's being employed here in the New Testament writings, in the words of Jesus. And it says that I'll go to prepare a place for you, and if I go to prepare a place for you, then I shall surely come again and receive you to myself, so that that bride can then produce children and increase the economy and the influence amongst the tribe and other tribes in the total klal or mishpacha of Israel as a whole. So anyway, that's just a little bit of an insight on tribal life, ancient Israelite setting, getting our bearings on what more was than what the theologians have told us over the last 1900 years or so, what they thought it should have been. So anyway, it's just something there. It's interesting how the continuity of the Bible holds true to the basic premise of the pictographical language and the lives, the ordinary lives of Israelite people in ancient Israel, and how that continuity remains consistent throughout the entire scriptures. Well, have a good feast day and Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom.